Welcome back to my channel. I'm James, and today we're going to be reviewing and discussing one of my favorite 1983 Matthew Broderick, kind of like Espionage, kind of like one of those films that just has a really good feel from the 80s. So I'm excited to announce we're gonna deep dive into WarGames on 4K Ultra HD. And this is the brand new 4K Ultra HD release from Shout Factory and MGM Studios. Now, this is one that I was really curious how it was gonna turn out because I grew up watching this on Saturdays, kind of like if a lot of you remember in the 80s, they used to have these Saturday afternoon and Saturday morning movies that would always come on. And WarGames was kind of one of those staples. It would constantly be played throughout the 80s and 90s. It would come up on those Saturdays, and I watched it numerous times, and then I actually had it on VHS and then DVD and then on Blu Ray. So I was curious how this was going to look in comparison to all those different releases I've seen over the years and that I've enjoyed. So today I'm going to be doing my exclusive 4K versus the original 2012 Blu Ray release image comparisons. That's where I take the native data off of all of these discs and compare them side by side above so you can see the differences between them. That lets you know as well with all of my testing data if this is worth buying or adding to your collection. And then at the end, I'll always wrap it up with my review score that lets you know a sum up total quality of this entire release, special features, the content, the image and sound quality to let you know how this stacks up in comparison to hundreds of other 4Ks I've exclusively tested and reviewed here on my YouTube channel. Now to start off with here, I'm going to show you the original 2012 MGM Blu-ray release. Now, the original Blu-ray release was okay. It did have issues with it was a softer image. It did have where you could see some of the film grain, but it was never as present as it should have been. Now, we're going to touch on some of that in the 4K, what I mean by that. But just talking about the Blu-ray here for a second, the Blu-ray was a very dull image presentation overall. And what I mean by that is, based on the native images that are pulled from the disc that's on that transfer, the colors were very dull in it. Overall, it had a kind of grayish appearance throughout the entire film. Skin tones, the sky, everything was just kind of dull and gray on the original Blu-ray release. Now, it's not as heavy as some other ones I've tested and reviewed previously here on this YouTube channel, but it was one of those that I really just thought it looked just very dull and kind of a bland presentation overall. Now, in comparison to Shout Factory's brand new 4K Ultra HD release, this is a native 4K 2160p presentation on this disc. And that makes a big difference because they went back to the original camera negatives and did a brand new 4K scan from the original camera negatives to create this new 4K. And I can tell you it brings much more life and vibrancy to the image that was missing on that previous 2012 Blu-ray release, like what I was talking about. Now, the image presentations you see above, as I've always explained over the years, these are the native images pulled from these discs, without all of the artificial things your TV can do to try to artificially change them. And that is always what makes the biggest difference on what we see and perceive when we're watching these 4Ks, is the native image that's present on these, because that's what your TV is working with to begin with. I can tell you on this new 4K with the new 4K scan they did, it does lend drastically to a nicer image with details and depth and clarity. The lights to darks on this were really a nice improvement, especially because, like I explained at the beginning, that the original Blu-ray kind of more had a grayish tone to it. Even the blacks on it were just gray. They weren't inky black. Well, on the 4K Ultra HD release, they are inky black, and you get some brilliant whites. Just like what you see here with the computer screens, the military computer screens. When you see it on this 4K Ultra HD release versus the original Blu-ray release, those screens pop. And let me tell you when I say they pop, this does have Dolby Vision and HDR10 on it, and that drastically improves what you see with the colors and the image presentation behind this, adding that depth because of the lights to darks, really shine through superbly well on this. And when you get to that scene where it's showing those screens, you'll really be like, whoa, those things look like they're really popping out of the screen at you with those white outlines on them and the colors behind them. They really looked fantastic on this. Now, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to go down, give this video a like and a thumbs up for me, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, just like with this review. I do a lot of these exclusive and early reviews that you're not going to want to miss out on. So make sure to go down, give this video a like and a thumbs up for me, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. Now, this new 4K Ultra HD release from Shout Factory is being released right before the 40th anniversary of this film. And man, does it make me feel old when I hear this film's on its 40th anniversary. It kind of makes me realize how much time has gone by and how old I'm actually getting. But I did really enjoy this film back when I watched it. If you like Matthew Broderick, he's really good in it. I just think he's such a likable actor, and there's numerous other ones you'll notice throughout this, but it is one of those films that I watched over and over and over through the 80s and the 90s. Now, this is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. They didn't cut down, change it, or edit that at all, so that's great news. Now, with that Dolby Vision and HDR10 presentation that I was referring to earlier, between the two of them, I will say I like the Dolby Vision just slightly better. I'm not going to say it was so much of a difference that it's really a game changer between both of them. The HDR10 was done very well on this and was no slouch, and the Dolby Vision looked good. It's just, I slightly preferred the Dolby Vision just a little bit more because on the actual images, when they got to the military screens and they would show those, for some reason on the Dolby Vision, it just had just a little bit more pop to it. And that's about the only way I can explain it. Otherwise, the colors were very similar. It's just kind of the whites popped a little bit more and the blacks seemed just a little bit inkier on the Dolby Vision. So in that sense, if you have Dolby Vision, you will enjoy that and it is a nice improvement. Though, like I said, the HDR10's not a slouch. Now, talking about the audio mixes on this does get an English DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 and a 2.0 mix. Now, I will touch on the English DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. That is the one I preferred, and it was a nice improvement over the previous 2012 Blu Ray. This did have much more clarity behind that audio mix. There was much more range moving it around the room. And I did think the actual bass response and the lows and the highs on that were really well done on this, way more so than they were on the previous Blu Ray release. So overall, the improvement on the audio mix on this was a nice and very healthy improvement that I did appreciate it and wouldn't want to watch it or listen to it on the previous Blu Ray again. After hearing how it sounds on this, the 2.0 on this as well sounded better than any of the previous releases. So either one of those, whichever one you choose to watch it on, they were healthy improvements, though I will say the 5.1 mix was where it was at for me, and that's what I really enjoyed watching this on. And it really did lend to that 80s soundtrack, the sound effects, everything about the 80s and what went behind films like this really shines through great on the sound mix that they did for this. That 5.1 was a nice improvement. Now, if after you get done watching this review and hearing my review score at the end, you do decide you want to buy WarGames on 4K Ultra HD, as always, I post those Amazon links directly in the description section and as a pinned comment in the comment section below. Those take you straight out to Amazon. They never cost you even a penny extra when you click on those links. But those do help to support this YouTube channel and the creation of these videos just a little bit. So make sure if you're going to buy this after hearing my review score and watching this video, make sure to go down to those links I've posted in the description section or as a pinned comment in the comment section below. I've made it nice and easy for you. You click on those, it takes you straight out there to order your copy. Now, on this new 4K, it does have English subtitles as well, so you do get that option on it as well, but those are the only subtitle options. Talking about some of how this was filmed, this is something I do want to touch on that's important to understand about this release, because there's a lot of folks that will kind of, I don't know if I want to say review the film or talk about the film, and they don't really understand about how the film was filmed at that time period, which affects their understanding of how the 4K appears or looks. And that's why I want to touch on this, because having an understanding of how the film was done originally makes a big difference on understanding on when they go back to scan the original camera negatives, what they're getting off of that with this new 4K scan. So because of how WarGames was filmed back in 1983, there are some scenes throughout it that were intentionally filmed with softer filters and lenses that lend to a more hazy or softer appearance for some of those brief scenes throughout the film. That is not something wrong with this 4K Ultra HD release. That is because they go back to the original camera negatives and scan from those with that new 4K scan. Those that were intentionally done, that were filmed with those softer filter or lenses, will always be on there. So those scenes that appear in there, kind of more like a hazy, almost dreamlike appearance that they're using to give the effect for that scene, is always going to be present. It doesn't mean that that scene is incorrectly done on this. And that's where I'm going to get to the film grain here. The film grain is very nicely present throughout the entire release, though on those softer and more hazy-like appearance, because it is intentionally with that softer hazy-like appearance, it seems like there is less film grain. That is not the case. It's simply because of the softer and hazy appearance that they were using for that scene. It just kind of blends in with the film grain more so because of the filters and lenses that were used on that scene. So that's something I wanted to touch on because that does make a difference, and I wanted to make sure I clarified that. Overall, the film grain is present throughout the entire release. There are some fluctuations in the film grain and instabilities though. My understanding is when watching it, it simply has to do with because the film wasn't stored the best. It does seem like with this new 4K scan, there was some areas that it just has a little bit of damage. They're not horrible. It's not something horrible you're going to notice throughout the entire thing. We're talking brief milliseconds where you'll see like some brief fluctuations in the film grain where it'll kind of just like flicker in certain areas because of that damage when they did this new 4K scan. It's not horrible, and it's not something that really most people are ever going to notice. But as most of you know, I try to be extra picky for all of you to tell you what to expect from the release, so that way you know when you're watching it if there's something wrong with it or if there's actually something that's the way the film is. Now, showing you what you get in this, I do like these new cases, which is hard to show that here, but Shout Factory has been using these thicker 4K cases that are much more sturdy and literally are just a much nicer case for these. But it does say WarGames on here. There's no slipcover that comes with it. On the back here, it does talk about it with the special features. As far as special features go, you get all of the special features from all the previous Blu-ray releases. They are all contained on here. Nothing is missing at all. Now, the film is rated PG, and it does say it has the Dolby Vision on here, and that is correct. It does have the Dolby Vision this time, even though, like I talked about in kind of that Red Dawn review, but if you haven't checked out Red Dawn, that was a great release of a classic 80s film as well. That if you haven't checked out that review, that's one you're going to want to check out as well. That's here, available here on my YouTube channel. There's actually 2 videos that are available of Red Dawn that kind of go into the analysis in depth, kind of explaining the different things and what my representatives at Shout Factory shared with me about that Red Dawn release. So that's why there's 2 different videos, but you'll want to check out those if you like that type of a movie. Kind of fits in with this genre, and it is one of those that I recommend. Now, WarGames is a fast-paced movie. It runs about 113 minutes, and when you get inside here, you do get your Blu-ray disc and your 4K Ultra HD. Your Blu-ray is a new scan that they used from the 4K, dumbed down to 1080p, so the nice thing is they didn't rehash the old 2012. You do get a brand new scan on the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray, though, is region A locked. So those of you around the world that want to import or buy this through that Amazon link I've posted below, keep in mind the Blu-ray is region A locked. 4K disc though is 100% region free. I did test it as I always exclusively do, so you'll have no issues playing this one at all. And I do like the artwork, how they use the artwork on here, and it kind of gives that like espionage feel behind it. Now, the new Dolby Vision and HDR10 really brings WarGames to new heights. I really thought the visual elements on it were never going to look this good as it does on this 4K Ultra HD release. That's where it really surprised me, because in comparison to that previous Blu-ray, like I said, it had a more dullish, just overall muted appearance that I was really surprised. A lot of the times in the 80s, a lot of our outfits were very wild. I mean, you'd have bright reds and pinks and purples and bright greens, and that was just the 80s that I grew up in, and that's just the way it was, and I love it. Well, they shined through great on this, whereas on the previous Blu-ray, they were more dull, and they just didn't look like the 80s really was, and that really representative of just basically how slightly poor the previous Blu-ray transfer was when you actually compare it to this new 4K Ultra HD. And it really lends greatly to showing lifelike and vibrant skin tones and the lifelike and vibrant colors of the clothes and the billboards and the cars from the 80s, and they shine through great on this new 4K Ultra HD release, and the Dolby Vision and HDR10 helped that drastically. Now, where the previous 2012 Blu-ray lacked in fine details and presenting that basically detail that we look for in skin and hair and costumes and things like that, this 4K Ultra HD makes up for in spades. It brought so much fine detail without them DNRing out the film grain, and that's where I said the film grain is present. And when you first start the film, if you remember where it opens and like the car driving through all the dust and sand blowing around, it's really heavily present, that film grain. And that's good that they didn't DNR it out, because that's what brings through so much more life that's in this film, that you can see so much more present on this. And that's where you realize the 2012 Blu Ray, it's really got really light film grain, and it doesn't look nearly as good or as filmic as this new 4K Ultra HD does. Now, getting to one of my most requested parts of my video here, this is where I go into some more of my exclusive testing about the rough average bitrate. I'm very excited to share, after doing all my testing on this, it had a very high and very strong rough average bitrate of 88 megabits per second. Wow. It was outstanding. I was shocked at how good it was, and really it didn't have very many dips at all. It was very stable throughout. It did have some really highs, but it stayed in that average of right around 88, and it looked great and added to why this looks so good. I was shocked at how good WarGames really looked on this release. Other than, I will say, those few scenes where they do use those filters and lenses intentionally, that when they scan those original film elements on a 4K scan, it just kind of lends to a softer image in those scenes. But those are always going to be there because that's the way it was intentionally filmed for WarGames, to have those slightly softer, kind of almost dreamy or hazy appearance in those scenes. I was blown away at how much actually they were able to pull out of this depth and details. Lights to darks, colors and vibrancy overall were just such a nice improvement. It wasn't an overly dark image in any shape or form, and I'm gonna touch on that because I see a lot of the times reviews or people commenting saying, oh, a 4K looked really dark on a lot of these older 4K scans or restorations. And I can tell you that is simply because your TV or player is not professionally or correctly calibrated. A lot of the time what happens is people will buy these. They'll get a TV from a store and just plug it in and assume that it's gonna play the best image possible. They don't. They have a lot of settings and things that I've talked about hundreds of times over the years that affect the image and can affect it in a negative way that present a very dark image, especially with like Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision usually has a second set of options separate from HDR, that when you put in a Dolby Vision disc like this, it enables separate options that sometimes can make it look and appear darker than what it's supposed to, because your TV is not professionally or correctly calibrated. That is why I always explain it is important to have your TV professionally or correctly calibrated so you get the proper image as you're seeing from the native images above. And that is where what you see on this should look very similar to what you're seeing above, obviously even better though, because YouTube's algorithm dumbs down Dolby Vision and HDR10 to standard HDR. So what you see above will only look better on your home display if you have one that's correctly calibrated. So just keep that in mind. That's one of those things I see a lot of the time that people just don't understand. It seems like there's not a lot of knowledge out there with a lot of reviewers or supposed reviewers that they say something when they don't really understand the technology behind it, and maybe they're watching it on a display that literally isn't displaying the image the way it's supposed to properly be displayed, which is why I test and review everything on 4 different professionally calibrated high-end 4K displays with 5 different 4K players, and that's how I test and analyze all of these to see what all the differences are between HDR, HDR10, Dolby Vision on those different displays. So I hope that gives you kind of a little brief explanation of something that if you're having some issues with that, it's most likely because your TV is not properly calibrated. Now, getting to my review score for WarGames on 4K Ultra HD, coining a term from the 80s that I absolutely loved since it's an 80s film, this gets an excellent 9.1. This is highly recommended and is a must-buy, and I've posted that link down below in the description section and as a pinned comment in the comment section below. This is one of those that you need to buy and add to your collection. If you are a fan of classic 80s films, any of these really feel-good movies that you can sit back and watch with your family, that just overall are really hard to replicate or reproduce these days. I talked about it a lot, but I really feel like in cinema, we're missing these type of classic films that hold up well as far as just the enjoyment behind them. Now, will I say the technology holds up? No. You can tell the technology, the computers, everything about it, yeah, it's dated. But but that adds to the charm and my love of the films and things from the 80s. And this is one of those that has such great charm, great performances, and a great 80s soundtrack and feel to it overall that, as I said, just really can't be replicated these days. And like I said, it's an excellent 9.1 4K Ultra HD release, and I was really blown away by the rough average bitrate on this and how stable and consistent it was throughout it, and just overall was a great release by Shout Factory. And that, to be honest with you, I do wish though that Shout Factory would have given us a slipcover with it. Now maybe some of you don't care about that, but I am a slipcover collector and I like having them, especially for a lot of these classic 80s movies, and I've talked about it before in a lot of reviews I've done of their releases. I mean, I really like their slipcovers. I'm really disappointed they didn't do a slipcover for this, but that didn't affect the review score. I'm just telling you a little nitpick on my own part. I would have liked to have a little slipcover on this, but otherwise it's a great release. I highly recommend buying this and adding this to your collection. It's such a fun 80s film that you can sit back, enjoy, watch with the family, watch by yourself. Either way, you'll go back over and over time and watch this. Like I said, I grew up watching this on Saturdays, and I've watched it throughout my lifetime probably now about 10, 11, maybe 12 times. So I've experienced it in all iterations, and this is the best WarGames has ever looked, and I really think it's going to be hard to ever beat this because they're going back to the original camera negatives, and like I said, this scan that they did really brought out amazing detail and life to this film that I never thought I'd ever see for one of my favorite, like, just feel-good 80s romps in kind of a sci-fi adventure world. And man, WarGames, I'm so excited this got such a good release. Make sure to start that conversation in the comment section below and let me know how excited you are for WarGames. How much you're excited that now this got a good release on 4K Ultra HD, and if you're going to be buying this and adding this to your collection. I always love to hear from all of you, so make sure to start that conversation in the comment section below. If you're going to pick up and buy this release, make sure to go down to those Amazon links I posted in the description section and as a pinned comment in the comment section below. As always, those never cost you even a penny extra, but those do help to support this YouTube channel and the creation of these videos just a little bit. As always, I'm not sponsored and I'm not paid by anybody. So if you want to help to support the creation of these videos and this YouTube channel, make sure to join my Collectors VIP Club. It only costs you a couple of bucks each month, but you get to join the Collectors VIP Club in support of all things physical media, movies, TV series, 4Ks, Blu Rays. I really dive into all of it, and I do all of these exclusive comparison reviews that you're only ever going to find here on my YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content and love all of the time and hard work I put into every single one of these videos, make sure to join my Collectors VIP Club or give a super thanks to the super thanks button down below. It's just like a tip. It allows you to give any tip of any amount on each of these videos. All of that helps this YouTube channel and helps the creation of these videos drastically. And I just want to say thanks to all of you, my Collectors VIP Club members. You truly do make a difference and make it possible for me to keep creating all this content that all of you enjoy watching. Make sure, if you haven't done so yet, to give this video a like and a thumbs up for me. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. And as always, I hope all of you truly have a blessed day. And I've always got something new and exciting coming out very soon.